Welcome to Know Your Rights, a programme that explores the legal issues that are particularly important to the Black community and provides you with the information that you need to engage with the law with confidence. I'm one of your hosts, Norman Basigu, and I'm joined by co-host Dr. Jennifer Obaseki, our award-winning legal expert.
Thanks, Norman. Hello, my name's Jennifer Obaseki, and I'm a solicitor with 18 years experience and founding partner of award-winning legal practice, Obaseki Solicitors.
Now, in each episode of Know Your Rights, we will discuss a common scenario relating to an area of law, such as criminal law, housing law, or immigration law. They are the kinds of scenarios that anyone might encounter in their daily life.
The purpose of this programme is to help the Black community understand how the law works. It's not offering specific legal advice. If you feel you do require legal advice, then please you should contact your local Citizens Advice Bureau or a solicitor. In this episode, we're going to be looking at divorce and family law.
So, here's this episode's scenario. Aaliyah and Tyrell have been married for 3 years and live together along with their young child. Aaliyah has told Tyrell that she wants a divorce. She says they argue constantly and that Tyrell has physically harmed her. She says that she fears for the safety of her and her child. And she also claims that he refuses to make financial contributions to maintain the family home. Tyrell says that none of this is true. He also says that he does not want a divorce. So there's quite a lot at play here, Jennifer, so let's get into it. And let's begin by looking at things from Aaliyah's perspective. So the first thing she'll want to know is, has Tyrell's behaviour been so bad, so the physical abuse, the arguments and the refusing to make financial contributions, are all these things so bad that they create strong enough reasons to enable Aaliyah to begin a divorce procedure?
Well, you know, divorce is a situation where you've got to show that the marriage has broken down irrevocably. So that means that you cannot save the marriage. You cannot go into therapy or you cannot go into mediation and there's no way out. Both people say, look, it's broken down and we want to separate. But the problem that she has is that Tyrell says none of this is true. So the first thing is, can the courts accept a petition from her without there being any evidence? The reality is the court will look at what she says on her divorce petition to say, has what she says amounted to one of the grounds for divorce? So you have to show that the marriage has broken down, or you can show 2 years or 5 years separation, irreconcilable differences, and you know, the court will see what she's saying, does it actually meet one of those grounds? And yes, when it comes down to unreasonable behaviour, I think that if it's proven, that'll be one of the things. But will Tyrell want to contest the divorce? Contesting a divorce can be lengthy and expensive. So he might not like the grounds on what she says. He might agree that the marriage has broken down and he doesn't want to continue, but not the reasons. So one of the things that often is good for couples in this situation is to try mediation first, so that there's not protracted, let me say, disagreements on the reasons why the marriage has ended. And also to see if there's the possibility of any form of saving the marriage. But the recommendation in this situation would be, if it's over, fine, what should go in the petition? And then those few things can be sort of discussed and agreed before it goes into court, so that there's no delay once the petition's in court.
Thank you very much for that broad and depthly, analysis on what Aaliyah's perspective would be on what she can do in this situation. Now, you said a few key terms in there, like petitions and, if things are unreasonable or beyond the point of saving. Are you able to break down some core elements of what a divorce procedure might actually entail? Because there might be viewers out there who are toying with the idea of divorce or just want to know what it actually entails. So
sure.
Can you break that down for us, just some core elements of it?
Just so that you know, within the new year, before Easter, is the most popular time for couples to separate and divorce, and that's because of the build-up over the Christmas period.
Really?
Yes, and not only that, people go into the new year wanting to make decisions about their lives. So what happens really during this period is couples kind of decide, are we going to divorce? Has it reached that point, or are we going to separate? You can have a formal level of separation, and that can be done through the courts as well. So you can agree the terms of your separation, where people are going to live, if there's going to be a level of maintenance, and also how you're going to have contact with the children if there are children. If it's a step further and that's a divorce, then again, the couples may decide, we are going to apply for this divorce. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to fill out the form, the D8 and the petition? Because divorce is actually quite expensive. So is formal arrangements for separation. The form itself can cost over £550. And then you've got to think of legal fees on top of that. If you are unemployed, you may also get a fee waiver to fill out court forms, so that should not be the thing that stops you just because you can't afford the fee. There are ways to ask for a waiver of the court fee. So once you've filled out the form, it gets sent into court, and then the person who is the petitioner is the one that is known to send it in. The person that receives it is the respondent, and they would have to get what's called an Acknowledgement of Service form filled out. And that is basically a form sent to them from the court outlining that a divorce petition has been filed and basically asking them for their response. Once the response goes in, the court then actually looks at it, and the levels of divorce petitions are so high that it's really usually done through a central court office, not necessarily the individual county courts around the country. So there's centres, big centres, where they process these applications.
Okay.
Once the response goes in from the acknowledgement, the court kind of assesses, does this actually meet the terms? Has it been proven that the marriage has broken down? And are the grounds upon which the petition has been made been agreed or accepted? Is there any form of dispute? And to be honest with you, if the court sees that those grounds have been met, the addresses, the parties are identified, there's no dispute with identity either, no forms have been returned, like return to sender or anything like that, then they usually process the divorce quite quickly. So this is why it's important, if there are other issues, peripheral issues with regards to ownership of property, residence, sharing of items, contact with children, it is good to try and discuss these things beforehand, or try and get a mediator to try and help discuss these things. When couples have been married for a long time, there are also issues such as pension rights. You know, one party might have been working while the other person stayed at home and contributed to making sure the household ran smoothly, and may have lost their ability to have long working years and build up a pension. So there's lots to be discussed, but generally those are the stages. And then once the court agrees, a decree nisi is issued, and then shortly after, if that's not contested, a decree absolute. And really and truly, you can get divorced quite quickly. During the pandemic, there has been a little bit of a backlog, but to be honest with you, things are still moving fairly quickly. So within, I would say 6 months, if there's no dispute, it can be all done and dusted.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jenny. And I think it's really good for the viewers to know exactly where to go and what this process actually looks like. And you going it through it step by step in that detailed way, I think would be very beneficial. Going back to the scenario a bit, Tyrell claimed that Aaliyah was lying on what she said that he was doing. So is there any way that Aaliyah can prove the things that actually happened to her? So for example, the physical abuse, like could she do things like receive formal medical notes from her doctor to show evidence that this had happened? Or if not, just things like that, for example. But what can she do to prove that these events actually happened to her and to show that she isn't lying? What would you suggest on that front?
Thank you. The question is really important because it is about evidence. And often it's quite difficult to evidence domestic violence, because domestic violence obviously comes in its physical format, which everybody's familiar with. But within the scenario, she also talks about emotional abuse and financial abuse, which have recently been recognised and more commonly talked about. So when it comes down to finances, the financial abuse, she says that he doesn't contribute towards the household. She might show that she's the one paying for a lot of the overheads of running the household, that he doesn't contribute financially by paying money to her bank account for joint expenses or provide things from within the home. When it comes down to the physical abuse that she talks about and feeling at risk of harm, she might have evidence of harm that's come to her injury. So again, the doctor's notes might come in there if she's spoken to a third party. But often the victims of domestic violence don't discuss this or don't report it, unfortunately. And those who are out there who are suffering abuse do need to know that there are safe places. Your doctor has a level of confidentiality and won't discuss, even with a husband, if you outline that you're the victim of abuse. So those notes would be marked and your confidentiality should not be breached. There are other organisations out there, so there are NGOs and charities that are specific for women and men who are victims of abuse. So if you don't feel confident going to your doctor or your GP, you may also go to one of those charities to seek help. Another way that she might be able to evidence this abuse is through third parties, neighbours, etc. And you can even directly go to the police. So if she's gone to the police and said, I don't want you to go and arrest him, but I want to even maintain a record, the police will be able to take that on board. They do have a duty to make sure that the children in the property are safeguarded. So does the GP. And these things have come about through obligations that they have for recording and reporting information on domestic violence and safeguarding children in the home. So if she does report incidents that have not even resulted in physical injury that you can see, the fact that she might have gone into the GP once, twice, or even to the police station once, twice, a few times, those records will be there, whether it's for the stress of not being able to sleep or fear of harm due to threats, because, you know, those are other things that may have happened within the home. Eventually, she will have a body of evidence to support her situation and outline exactly how the abuse has happened.
Right. Honestly, thank you so much for that depthy analysis on, you know, what somebody can do in this situation. Is there any other point you would like to add on to that very quickly?
Yes, Norman. Actually, it's important that people realise that you don't need your evidence to be perfect, that there are protections out there. You can apply to the court for levels of protection. You can use a non-molestation injunction. You can even get an injunction to exclude somebody who's harming you from staying within your home. So even if the victim of domestic violence or any individual feels harassed in their home, there are levels of protection in the court and they can try and apply for an injunction.
Right, with that being said, Dr. Jennifer Obaseki, thank you for joining us, as always.
My pleasure.
And with that said, you've been watching Know Your Rights. I'm Norman Basigu, and from myself and Jennifer, until next time, goodbye.